I'm Anastasia. I'm a permaculturalist and a writer living in northern New South Wales, Australia.
So, Anastasia, why did you choose to come live over here?
Well, it was accidental, really. I'd been travelling for a long time and I really felt like I wanted to grow food. So I looked for a clean place with clean soil, clean water and a basically clean environment so that I could grow some food for myself and my family. I was vulnerable. I had a small child and I didn't have support. So I wanted to be able to build something around me that would support me in the long term, and that was my kind of self-sufficiency. This is an area of the world where the soil and water is quite clean still, we're lucky, but it's also an area where we have fairly cheap land. So I was very fortunate to have some money as an inheritance from when I was a very small child, and I was able to find basically quite cheap land. And that wasn't a barrier to me, but it is a barrier to some people, I'm aware. But there's other relationships that can be forged between people and land that don't need them to own that land. Happily for me, I'm able to own and be custodian of this land unfettered, so I'm able to design and develop and be on this land in a way that I want to be, which is really amazing. Yeah, that's how I came here.
Cool.
Yeah.
And tell us about Billen Cliffs.
Billen Cliffs is a large rural strata community, and it's been here for 30 years, 32 years I think now. It was founded back in the early 80s by a group of people who wanted to get back to the land. They wanted to grow food, build sustainable homes, and that was their central kind of structure, their central common goal together. So they got in here and built roads and designed the property for 115 families on about 600 acres. They designed a cemetery, a public hall, an arts and crafts centre, a shop and coffee shop. Some of these things that also bring together, you know, community incentives. 30 years later, those first families who moved on originally have seen their children grow up and leave. And we've seen waves of new families coming in from cities and from elsewhere around the world wanting to do that same thing. So it's seen a real revitalisation in the last 15 years, which is really beautiful to see. We've got bunches of young kids again, so it's like that second generation going through now. And of course, with a lot more knowledge and consciousness, and I think also with a lot more urgency, people are feeling that it's really time for them to take control of, you know, where their food comes from and how they live, and to take the power back by actually being off the grid. So these are all things motivating more and more people to move to Billen, which is great. What else should I say about Billen? It used to be just a denuded cattle paddock. There used to be one family living on all these acres of land, and they couldn't even support themselves economically. They had, you know, they went bankrupt, they had to leave. And that was the time at which this core group of original community aspirants bought this land. And there were barely any trees here, certainly not a lot of mature trees in the areas that you will see today where people are living. But now we've got rainforest gullies and revegetating eucalypt forest and a lot of wildlife all over the property, which makes it a really unique place to live. I mean, some of this wildlife are things like echidnas. You know, I had an echidna a couple of days ago following me around my garden for half an hour. It was absolutely beautiful. It's one of the reasons I live here. Wedge-tailed eagles, glossy black cockatoos, wallabies everywhere. And we have a no dog or cat policy, which is one of the reasons which we have so much wildlife. And we work together as a community to make decisions about what we spend our money on in terms of infrastructure, the public events we hold and the arts and crafts activities that we might want to sponsor, and those kinds of things. Yeah. So it's a flourishing, large, rural community experiment, really.
So how is your life out of the grid,
How's my life off the grid? You know, I find it really strange when some of the mainstream talk around getting off the grid seems to be bogged down in the fact that this seems so hard and difficult for most people. It boggles my mind. I saw a television report a couple of days ago here in Australia about how a household in Western Australia in Perth, one of the sunniest places in the world, had just got off the grid and put solar panels on his roof. And it was reported in the news as if it was something incredible and fantastic. But myself, as a sole income earner with children that I'm raising on my own, I was able to get off the grid here 10 years ago. I haven't used a drop of grid power for 10 years. There's no difficulty at all. You know, the difficulty is in the mindset and in the political will. All the technology is there. It's not expensive. I think the key component in that is that we've become so dependent on really power-hungry devices in our homes that we cannot imagine life without them. And the simple fact of the matter is that you need so little. You need so little. I have a laptop to power my work life. I have a really great power efficient fridge. I'm not living in a dirt floor cave with no technologies. I have all the central things that, you know, Western civilization depends upon for its opulence. You know, a fridge and a computer. It's not difficult. So I love it. I really love the fact that I don't feel wired all the time. I remember when I used to live in mains power houses, there's all this humming that goes on at night. There's all these lights, all these sounds, and I found it really difficult to sleep, and I didn't realise until I first got here and I went off the grid, and at night it's just quiet. It's just, there's not all that incredible wired humming going on all over the house. I live a pretty normal integrated life at my level of power usage. It doesn't hold me back from being, you know, involved in my society or my community in any way. So it's not a difficult thing. I think more people need to take the leap, you know, today.
In your house, what have you done since you arrived here?
When I arrived here, I had my little boy, who's now 10. He was 1.5 at the time. And I was really lucky to have found this piece of land with a dry, clean place to sleep already built on it. So it was basically, you know, a square cabin in which I could just sleep and basically cook on my camp stove. And that was bliss to me. That was heaven. I'd been overseas and I'd seen some pretty difficult things in East Timor where the infrastructure and the lifestyle is certainly not as safe or as easy as here, and I needed a break. And so I built a couple more bedrooms on the property, and I used a technique we call cementing, which is when you get a waste product from, you can use either crop waste or you can use timber production waste, and for us we have a timber mill not far from here. So the sawdust is basically free, and we use that mixed with lime or cement, and we build it into a kind of rammed earth wall. So at very low cost I built a couple more rooms using that technique. It's also a technique that you require quite little skill to be able to master. So it's something that you can invite your friends and family to help out with. I connected water, which I harvest from my roof, and I connected the solar panels and the power system. I built my outside spiral bathroom and a composting toilet. I put up a very large vegetable garden, and also started a big project regenerating the corner of my property back to rainforest, which has been a real pleasure and honour to do, watching those trees grow. So I've tried to address many of the components of sustainable living, you know, in terms of not only wildlife and conservation values in the rainforest, but also infrastructure and human needs as well, including food, power and water. Yeah, that's what I've been busy doing. And building skills as well. And I think skills is one of those key components of our future resilience, is building skills. So many of us lack skills, and sometimes the best way to learn those skills is just to get into a patch of ground with some friends and learn by doing.
So that's the way you have learned permaculture?
Yeah, I mean, in 2004, I did a permaculture course, which we call a PDC, Permaculture Design Certificate, at a farm over in the Shannon in northern New South Wales, and that was led by a lady called Sindhu Weber. The farm is now run by Jeff and Nadia Lawson, and it's a very popular permaculture centre. So I was really lucky to be there in the early days of that farm and be really inspired by some of the things they were doing there, which involved, you know, like straw bale house and integrated power systems and water bodies and garden and livestock integration and everything, which was great. And after doing that course, I spent 2 years travelling and really wanting to get my hands dirty in a whole lot of different examples. I went to Hawaii, where I learnt the Hawaiians have this lovely art of water gardening. They call it lo'i gardening, and they run water through their gardens. And that was really beautiful. I spent 2 months in Hawaii working on a couple of farms. And then I travelled to East Timor, where I worked on permaculture projects in the far east of the country and then around Dili, the capital. And then I came back to Australia and was involved in a large community down on the coast in a place called Crescent Head. And that involved more of a design focus, designing a really large property for 70 families into a 100 or 200 year future planning process. And so I was deeply involved in that, and I was deeply involved in flora and fauna surveys and infrastructure design. But having had children, once I had children, I really felt like I needed to settle in a place of my own and more deeply develop some of those skills on a personal focus, and something that you could walk outside your door every day and do, you know. So whether it be 6 in the morning or 12 at night, you were able to continue that kind of development of permaculture values. It wasn't something that was over in a community somewhere else. Yeah.